Today we're reviewing Star Wars Fully Operational, the Engineer Sourcebook for Age of Rebellion. Let's start with the new player options. We got 3 specializations as usual, and I also did a video on each of these 3. The Droid Specialist, who specializes on dealing with droids, fixing and buffing them. The Sapper, who specializes in building stuff up and knocking it down. And the Shipwright, who specializes in crafting ships, or really just crafting in general, and also is good with ships in a couple different ways. Check out those reviews if you want. I'm not going to talk any more about them. The species, on the other hand, let's see, we got the Bith, the Kaminoan, and the Skakoan. The Bith, of course, are the Mos Eisley Cantina band. That's what we know them for, and let me guess, because they're known for doing music, they just naturally do music, right? It's just an entire race of musicians. Well, kind of. They have very sensitive hearing. They get some unique ability dealing with hearing. Both a good part and a bad part of that. And they're just really good at the whole perception thing in a couple different ways. The Kaminoans are the people who made the clone troopers from the prequels, if you care about those movies, which you shouldn't because they suck. They are expressionless, which is both good and bad for them as far as talking goes. And they're naturally pretty smart, have some help with medicine, but of course physically frail. I think that's pretty obvious. The Skakoans have a built-in body armor. Has its own soak and number of hard points, encumbrance, and all that, just like regular armor. And it can't be worn by other species. Also, they need this to not die. And technology is a huge part of their culture, so they're naturally adept at that. There's not much to say about the species. They're all perfectly fine. I like that they each have a weakness to them, which is nice. But to me, the only real standout are the Kaminoans, both because they helped create the Empire eventually, but they created the Clone Army, which led to the Empire's rise. And also, I just like the idea of a scientist who's kind of aloof on the whole playing God thing. It's kind of fun. Could be fun. Now for the signature abilities, we get the Harder They Fall and Unmatched Ingenuity. The Harder They Fall is basically a giant debuff against some vehicle or other structure. It lasts X amount of time, and you and your compatriots will do more damage against it. Or not necessarily damage, more destructive force on the thing. With Unmatched Ingenuity, the player can temporarily buff a particular weapon or item, giving it extra stuff that it can do. That one sounds cool, but I'm not really sure just how much usefulness you're actually going to get out of it. Unless you get really creative and add some sort of more narrative benefit to an item with the GM's approval. That's not really what it seems to be made for, but I guess you could. It's implied that maybe you could, but it's hard to see a lot of bang for your buck with that one. But I would probably pick it just because I like it. I just like the idea of taking a second to like hotwire your weapon and get more out of it, or some other item, get it to do more than it could. Though what that is hard to say because it's not explicitly mapped. It's mostly for weapons, really. But the Harder They Fall's contribution is hard to deny. It can be really useful in a wide variety of situations. Now for the equipment. We have a lot of blasts. Get used to seeing the blast quality. Lots of grenades. They got KOTOR grenades, which made me all kinds of nostalgic. Shockwave grenade, incendiary, and the cryoband grenade are all statted here. God, I love that game. And of course, my favorite, I mentioned it before, the Zerka M9 Boomer Heavy Pistol, where basically you shoot these exploding shells, and it's a light range weapon with blast. Finally, we have that actually in the book, and not just something you'd have to craft, because it'd be pretty hard to craft, actually, with the basic rules. Great for any engineer, but especially the Sapper and Saboteur from the core book. Absolutely want to get that. And to dual wield those, that'd be insane. Anyway, there's a lot of explosives. A whole section on explosive compounds and devices, detonite, baradium, shape charge, and fuel air bomb, just all different types. My favorite part of the equipment section are, throughout we see, it's mostly in the attachments. Attachment for your weapon, attachment for armor. There's a few pieces of gear where it's like a droid intelligence, a droid brain targeting system for your weapon, or a droid defensive system for your armor. And so if you want really advanced tech that has its own droid intelligence, or maybe you're playing sort of 2 characters like I did with one of my characters where he was a droid maker, but also he had a droid who started as like a voice box on his tool belt, and then became a voice box and some eyes on the tool box, and then 3 floating toolboxes, and it just kept growing from there. But it would have been awesome to have these parts, these actual mechanical attachments on my person in different ways, and have that be this other character I was also playing simultaneously. Could have been fun, but We always get the book after we need it. The rest of the stuff, let's see, there's plenty of attachments for weapons, a couple tools that both function as weapons and also tools helping you with your mechanics checks, just like in the technician book. Really, overall, unless you count the crafting rules part, this contributes about as much in terms of technological goodness to the game as the technician sourcebook did. This one just has a bigger emphasis on explosiveness stuff and not really anything to do with computers and slicing, because the technician has these slicer specializations. Alright, next let's talk about the expanded mechanic rules. Now these are just like the Seeker sourcebook's expanded survival rules. Same basic format. On one page we got a couple paragraphs describing new things you could do with a mechanics check or engineering check. Perform a combat refit, replenish field supplies, undertake a quick structural assessment, write a tech manual, craft improvised tools, create an impressive set of tools, and that's about it. And they all have their own set rules, how they work, how you can spend advantages and threats. Not hugely robust, but there's a few suggestions here. And then on the other side we have a chart for spending advantages, threats, and all that on the engineering focus checks in general, meaning some would apply to some types of engineering checks, but not to others. It's robust enough to cover a wide variety of engineering checks all in one chart, so not every option would actually make sense. You have to make it so it makes sense, obviously. Now, ever since the enhanced slicing rules and crafting rules, I never really felt like techie was really hurting for a lot of stuff to do. It definitely did not need this treatment like the survival role did, and there's other roles I wish did have this treatment that don't, but I'm not complaining. There's also a section on repair and construction efforts in different settings. How desert and tundra, high atmosphere, in the middle of a firefight, forest, jungle, urban, underwater, space, an active battlefield, and what effects they would have on repairing and building stuff, which is great for the GM. Always nice to have more tools to work with. And it's definitely given me a few ideas for different types of engineering-based encounters. Now for what might be my very favorite section in the book, yes, even more so than ship crafting, maybe not. Converting civilian vehicles and facilities for military use. Basically, you can add a hardpoint onto a civilian vehicle, although it's not entirely sure. Wait, in the ship section, does it say what is a civilian vehicle? Or do you have to infer from the description? Some are more obvious than others, but... Or is it, I don't think it's like an official thing, civilian vehicle. Up to the GM, I imagine. But you take a civilian vehicle and you can increase the upgrade capacity in exchange for a bad thing. And there's a list of bad things that can be permanently added onto it. The idea is that you're pushing the ship far past what it normally could do. These additional aftermarket upgrades and modifications can make the ship act a little funky. Basically, like the Millennium Falcon, it's had all these modifications and sometimes it doesn't work perfectly because it's doing things it wasn't made to really be able to do. And you can do this to your vehicle and it has all these wonderful little quirks to it. There's a set list to this, but there's no reason you can't add more with the GM's approval. I would expand the rules even further. Why just civilian vehicles? What is a civilian vehicle anyway? Or hell, even weapons. Why not tweak weapons? Why have to break them down and recraft them? Why not just tweak the weapons if we want? Oh, and you can also do this to bases. There's a chart. Add a hidden hangar, infirmary, repair rooms, security upgrades, concealed upgrades, yada yada yada. I don't really care about bases so much, but you can do it. It's there. And there's quite a bit to it. If you cared about those, like if I cared about those, I would be happy with what they did. Crafting spaceships. Yeah, this is pretty robust. The templates. We got speeder bikes, land speeders, starfighter, freighter, corvette, frigate, destroyer, all the way up to space station. Everything in between, all sorts of the walker, airspeeder, shuttle, and that's your frame. And then you build the frame, which doesn't seem to take as much time as I feel like it probably should. But you pay the cost, you craft it just like normal. In fact, really this is sort of like crafting a droid from the Technician Sourcebook, that multi-stage crafting. First you craft the frame, then you spend advantages and threats and triumphs and all that. Then you pick a template for engines. Single ion coil, high performance repulsor cluster, ion drive array. There's of course a description and stats so you actually know what the hell any of that means. Is there a twin ion engine? I know what a twin ion engine is. No. Ion drive array, is that what it is? Then you spend advantages for your engines, add a hyperdrive module, which is its own separate attachment. That's new, right? Yeah. About damn time. I think before it was only on that customizable starfighter from Technician Sourcebook, which was always kind of a disappointment to me. I like it in theory, but in reality, it's not really worth the effort. And we definitely don't need it anymore, because we got this. Okay, so engines, then you got hull. Do you want a sleek carapace, expanded capacity holds, a lightly armored hull, deflective plating, combat plating, spend advantages, yada yada yada, and then a assembly check. And once again, yes, you can spend advantages and threats and all that on the final assembly. So yeah, I'm not really sure how much happier I could be with these new ship crafting rules, especially with the whole retrofitting civilian vehicles into military rules they got. Those combined, you can really get the ship you want, your baby. Not just something that was in the core book and the GM gives to you because in the core book it says that you get a group resource, and in the core book one of those resources is a ship or several is a ship, and you just pick which ship you want or whatever. You actually get to make your own ship. You can even have one of the players who draws maybe draw the layout or something, draw your own design, or you pick any hull from in the books, from the lore, from the Wikipedia. Go on Wikipedia, find something, really make it your own, and then step by step make it a whole big quest. Like maybe start them on a planet, maybe some poor backwater junk world like Tatooine or fake Tatooine, what was it, Jakku, or any hole like Nar Shaddaa. That'd be great. Start them off on Nar Shaddaa. They've been stranded there. They're too poor to get passage, or maybe there's a blockade or something for some reason, and you need a ship to get off. You can't just get off on some passenger liner or buy a ferry. Build a new ship that can get them off, and that could be their baby. They can spend a couple sessions finding the parts, just the right parts to fit together, and then have someone or all y'all do crafting checks, and you slowly, bit by bit, put this ship together. It could be a lot of fun. We got 3 ideas for engineering campaigns you can put your group through, and we have some engineer awards, which are not really worth talking about. So that's the engineer source book. Should you buy it? Well, the obvious comparison is to the technician source book, and the technician source book, special modifications, crafting rules, and also slicing rules that it brings to the table really make it the better all-around techie book. So if that's what you want, I still think it's one of the best first books you can buy because of that, especially if you're a techie, but also just all of the technology that you have access to in general with the crafting rules and the technology itself. However, if you're a spaceship-focused character, you want to be focused on spaceships, this is to that type of character what the technician source book was to slicers. So if you're playing a techie, well, obviously, you're probably going to lean more towards whichever career you actually are. Technician to technician, engineer to engineer, obviously. But if you're still on the fence, and to everyone else, explosions and ships versus computers and general crafting. Which is more important to you? That's what it's going to come down to. But if you're a techie and you already have the technician source book, this one does not disappoint. If you're thinking about getting a second one, definitely a must-buy for you. I'm quite proud of this mug. I like it. It says "Roll Fortitude" in the fancy medieval text. Roll Fortitude. See, the implication is that it's poison, right? You're drinking. Oh Jesus! The best part of waking up is not shit in your cup.